How's it going, everyone? Dylan here from AYCB, and I'm back with a special third Marvel Champions video to do with the brand new heroes that released. It is Star-Lord and Gamora. Normally I just do a review on them and that would be it, but because we had two heroes releasing on the exact same day, which has never happened as long as I've been in the game, I'm not sure if that happened before, but it's relatively new, I thought it would be really interesting to do a comparison video, a Star-Lord versus Gamora video, because not everyone buys every single hero that comes out for Marvel Champions. There are a lot of packs. It costs a whole bunch of money to invest in every single one. Sometimes you want to know which ones you should buy, which ones you should skip. And because we have two coming out the same day, some people might be just wanting to pick up one new pack. And I thought I would help them out and give some insight into why you might choose one over the other. So just to clarify though, I am not going to tell you that this hero is better than that hero or anything like that, because obviously in a game like Marvel Champions, it comes down to playstyle, it comes down to your preference, it comes down to the player cards you're looking for to enhance your deck building, so that there's no clear-cut answer here. However, I'm going to give different scenarios and who might appreciate Star-Lord more than Gamora and vice versa, and what kind of people might be interested in one over the other to hopefully help you out in deciding which one you're going to pick up. So we're going to kick things off by looking at the pros and cons of Star-Lord, then we'll do the same thing for Gamora, and then we'll end off by me telling you for each of these heroes if you'll like this hero, if, and I'll give you a list for each one, and this should help you decide which one you should pick up. Okay, so let's jump right into Star-Lord. All right, so the first pro that I'm gonna go over for Star-Lord is that he feels very powerful. And when I say that, I mean it, because his whole MO is basically he has a bunch of overpowered, overtuned abilities and ways to play these abilities. However, it's at the detriment of being dealt encounter cards. So you're gonna be able to do things with Star-Lord and attain a power level with Star-Lord that you probably can't with a lot of other heroes in the game. You just have to keep in mind that you have this, downside that you have to deal with because of that. So when I say that, I mean it. There is his signature ally has a 5 resource cost, and normally that would be, way too expensive, and it would be an ally that's like, oh, great ability, but I'll never play that at 5. But the thing with Star-Lord is, of course, he can play cards from the hand once per phase, I believe. Yeah, once per round, sorry. Once per round at a 3 resource discount. And that means that if it costs 3 or less, it's essentially free. So a lot of your cards that cost 3 resources are going to be able to be played free on your turn, at least once per round. And for instance, Nova Prime, which costs 5, you can basically look at that as a 2-cost ally. You're never going to play Nova Prime for 5. I can't imagine a situation where that's the best play that you have. You basically have to spend your entire hand to play it. But at 2, it would be the best 2-cost ally in the entire game, and you have that in this deck. So a card like Nova Prime is a great example of things you can achieve with Star-Lord that you'll just never achieve with another hero in terms of power level for resource cost. Obviously, another powerful aspect of him is that he starts with an element gun in his hand. A lot of heroes in this game have these signature cards. Captain America starts with his shield, but there are a lot of other heroes in the game, most of them, that have these kit cards, these ones that really make the game go a lot smoother for you, set you up right from the start, make you a lot more powerful. The only caveat being that you have to draw into it. So a lot of times you're mulliganing and trying to find this card, you're getting lucky or unlucky depending when it comes up. With Star-Lord, you are always going to start with an element gun in your hand, and because it costs 3, you can use his ability and play it for free on your very first turn, which means that having this powerful element gun that can do 3 damage every single turn is there from the get-go, and you always have it. That is an amazing value. To have a kit card right from the start is amazing, and there's 2 of them in the deck, which means that all you have to do is try to draw into the second one. Now you'll have 2 of these and be able to do 6 damage a turn. It's super powerful, and it's something you can always rely on with Star-Lord. Likewise, the cards like Daring Escape, you're going to be, it's a way to deal yourself reliable face-down encounter cards to be able to facilitate and power up other cards that are in his deck, but also it's a way to constantly be readying Star-Lord. There's 3 copies of this. You're going to be using it a lot. You're going to constantly be getting multiple turns during your turn, or multiple basic attacks and basic thwarts on your turn, because that feels really powerful. We've seen that in Quicksilver. It feels overpowered. Star-Lord has a bit of that, on a slightly lower scale than Quicksilver. And obviously everything's building to Sliding Shot, which again, because it costs 3, you can essentially play it for free. The only stipulation is you have to control an element gun, but you start the game with one. You'll likely have one in your hand, and you're going to be able to do a whole bunch of damage, 5 minimum, but likely 7, potentially even 9, depending on how many encounter cards you have. So first pro is that he's super powerful. There's a ton of really powerful cards in his, 15 cards in his unique cards that you're going to be building around. And he, like I said, he achieves a power level that a lot of heroes can't because of this detriment that he has with being dealt face down encounter cards to sort of balance that out. All right, the next pro is that he is exciting. He's one of the probably most exciting heroes in the game. And what I mean by when I say exciting is that there is so much risk taking and there's so much pressing your luck that you never feel quite safe with Star-Lord. And, you know, for some people that might be a con. You might want to feel a little bit more, you know, safe and that everything's going your way. With Star-Lord, that's not going to be the case, but it's going to make for a lot you know, a more entertaining game. If you're, you know, feeling a little stale or dry, you know, facing even heroes like Rhino and some of the entry-level heroes on even normal difficulty for some of them, if you're looking for a way to ramp that challenge up and just make it a little bit more, you know, fly by the seat of your pants and just a lot more risk taking, this is the hero to do that with. You can take any villain in the game and make it a, you know, feel very frantic when you have like 4 encounter cards in front of you. And even though you feel powerful, you're also having to deal with all the stuff that's coming out because of those encounter cards. So there's no specific cards tied to this pro. It's more just, if you're so used to playing a lot of the heroes in the game that we already have and just, you know, that style of play, this is going to be closer to what you've kind of felt in Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch had a similar mechanic, which was, you know, manipulating the boost icons, but having to draw into them a lot. And that made Marvel Champions feel different. I felt like I was playing a different version of Marvel Champions when I played with Scarlet Witch than I did with some of the other most recently released heroes. Star-Lord takes that to even further in some regards because encounter cards are even more deadly, and you never know how many of these that you deal to yourself are going to be devastating, how many are going to be, you know, something that you can deal with. That whole aspect is exciting and a little nerve-wracking as well. So if that's a playstyle you think you'll enjoy, and if you enjoyed aspects of Scarlet Witch and you want to try it again with something even a little bit more, you know, on the next level, I would say Star-Lord is a great one to take on and a great one to try. All right, the next pro with Star-Lord is that he kind of rounds out and completes or really kickstarts the entire Guardian trait, especially in leadership for Marvel Champions. So we've seen the Guardian trait introduced obviously with all these Guardians of the Galaxy's characters and heroes, but he really takes it and allows that to be an archetype with the leadership trait. So he's a leadership hero, he comes with leadership cards. Obviously they can all be flipped out, so I'm not going to grade him based on the leadership cards alone, because obviously you might get them and just decide to play him aggression or protection or whatever. But that being said, even in his base cards, things like leader of the Guardians, each Guardian character you control gets +1 thwart. You know, that's allowing for you to play an archetype that has a bunch of Guardian characters. And of course, Star-Lord himself says on his alter ego side, or on his hero side, that each ally you control gains the Guardian trait. So you can play with a bunch of allies that were already in the game, and now they are Guardians, and they're going to benefit from leader of the Guardians, as well as if you're playing a leadership aspect, a bunch of the cards that, you know, get boosted because of the Guardian trait being on them. So if that's something you're interested in, especially if you play leadership a lot and you're looking to, you know, take it in a different direction than the Avenger archetype that we've had for so long, this is the pack you really need to buy. It's almost a no-brainer at that point. If that interests you, if you like leadership and you want to try playing leadership Guardians of the Galaxy, this is the pack to buy, and there's going to be a bunch of cards that facilitate that for you and add to your deck building capabilities, not only in his signature cards, but also in the cards that you can use across all the heroes. So that is the next pro. All right, and the last pro we're gonna go over really quickly is just that this allows you to do more with the aerial trait. If that's something that you have been wanting to explore, you've seen in other heroes like Wasp, for instance, where they have this ability to add an aerial trait, but it doesn't really do anything, and you've been wanting more options, this is the pack to buy, because every single additional player card that's included that's not part of his deck all has to do with the aerial trait. So we get Agile Flight, we get Ever Vigilant, we get Dive Bomb, and all of them, you have to have the aerial trait to take advantage of them, which means that you get another 9 cards now that are specifically built for the aerial trait. So that is exciting for anyone who's wanting to explore that, and he even has a couple cards, or a single card, in his actual signature cards that gives him the aerial trait, which is Jet Boots. So Star-Lord himself can even have an aerial, you know, build built around him, and there's even a leadership card that comes in here as well that you know, specifically needs the aerial trait to be able to hit its max potential. So there are a lot of cool aerial possibilities in here. If that's something you've been wanting to explore, you've wanted more of in your deck building possibilities, this is the deck to pick up. All right, so let's talk about the cons, because there are some cons. So first one is that Star-Lord relies a lot on luck. You are going to have some instances where you just have a really bad time with Star-Lord because of the encounter cards you draw. You might have a huge turn that you've set up or that you've just finished where, you know, you played a couple different daring escapes and you got a bunch of basic attacks done. Maybe you had a sliding shot in your hand as well that was able to take advantage of that. You used Star-Lord's main ability to play a card for free from your hand, and you did a bunch and you dealt yourself, say, 3 encounter cards, and you felt like that turn was really good. there's going to be times where you get to the villain phase and all those encounter cards that you dealt yourself are going to absolutely destroy any plan you had in place, and it's going to wreck your entire experience, and you're going to either want to restart or you're going to have to restart, you're going to lose, whatever. It's going to happen here or there when you play Star-Lord, because you just never know what you're going to deal yourself. You could deal yourself a couple nasty encounter cards and a Shadows of the Past and really ruin your day, or you could deal yourself some that do nothing and then you're fine. So you kind of have to be okay with the luck aspect of Star-Lords. And I put this in the con because, you know, a lot of times in card games, that's something that is the, you know, the divisive line between a lot of people is skill versus luck. And there's always going to be luck because we're drawing cards from a deck blindly, and there's only so much you can control there. But Star-Lord takes the luck and really amps it up because you're going to rely a lot on the cards you're being dealt not destroying your plan, and sometimes they are. So that is one con, and it's something it might not be a con for you specifically, but you got to keep it in mind when you're getting into this pack, is if you don't like that playstyle and you don't like any additional luck being added into Marvel Champions, this might not be the pack you want to pick up. And the second and last con is that of the two that we're comparing here today, I would say the Star-Lord is the weaker solo character. And I mean true solo, like one hero if you like to play that way. And again, this won't be the case in every situation because you could have some really good games with Star-Lord, and there's ways that you can probably build his deck to help manage this a little bit better. But I would say in general, because you're dealing yourself so many face down encounter cards, when you play in multiplayer with teammates, or even, you know, solo with 2 or 3 heroes, whatever the case may be, you have other heroes that can help pick up the slack from the stuff that's being dealt to you. So if you get dealt a bunch of encounter cards and it puts some minions in play, and, you know, it brings in a whole bunch of stuff that you have to worry about, there's other people that can help you deal with that stuff so that Star-Lord can still hit his potential and, you know, get the most out of his turns. When you're playing solo, you can have a really, really good turn that dealt you 3 encounter cards, and suddenly that could be 3 big minions, or, you know, 2 minions, and it could stun you or confuse you or something, and now you have to spend your next entire turn just trying to deal with the board. And that's good. I mean, that is a lot of Marvel Champions, but Star-Lord is going to have a lot of that, and I felt this in Scarlet Witch too, because you're just having to deal with what you're doing to yourself, essentially. So there's the ceiling to your power, because as soon as you want to go all out, sometimes you have a board that you have to deal with, and then by the time you've dealt with that, maybe that you don't have the hand you want at that point. So it's a little bit of a trickier solo hero, I would say. Not something that you can't get around. It's not like he's bad in solo. You just are gonna have to really think about this as you do your deck building, and you might find that ultimately it's just better to play Star-Lord as a 2-handed solo hero, and you get more out of him that way. All right, let's move on to Gamora. So Gamora's pros. The first pro is that she is probably one of the best deck building heroes in the game. And I say that because really we've only had 2 heroes now that modify the deck building rules, and that's Spider-Woman and now Gamora. So if deck building is your thing, if you enjoy deck building, if you spend as much time tinkering with decks and trying to find the best combination before you actually take them into play, and you enjoy that process, it's a no-brainer to pick up Gamora, because it's just gonna make that a little bit more interesting for you. You're gonna be able to start thinking about things that you hadn't been able to think about before outside of Spider-Woman, and there's gonna be different combinations, because even though she only allows for 6 different cards, that could be 3 and 3, that could be 2, 2 and 1, that could be 2 and whatever. Like, there's so many combinations, and as long as they're attack or thwart events, you can try them from any aspect. There's going to be different mixtures you can try against every single villain, basically. So every one is going to create a new puzzle for you that just wasn't present in Marvel Champions so far. So and again, I guess I should clarify in case you don't know her ability. Her ability is that you may include up to 6 attack and or thwart events in your deck from aspects other than your chosen aspect. So that's why the deck building gets more interesting. So again, if you like deck building, this is way more interesting from a deck building perspective than Star-Lord is, and will provide a lot more opportunities for you to sort of tinker with things and see what you can figure out. The next pro is sort of an opposite to one of Star-Lord's cons, and that is that Gamora is a great true solo hero. One of the best, in my opinion. It would take a lot more plays and comparisons with other past heroes to really determine where she ranks in that perspective. But because of her deck building rules being tinkered, it allows for things where a lot of heroes, when you place true solo, there's a gap that you're having to deal with. So if you're playing an aggression hero as a true solo hero, you have to think about the fact, how am I going to deal with threat? Because there's no one to help me do this. I have to build in some options to be able to deal with threat if I'm not playing a hero that inherently has that built in. Same thing if you play a Justice hero. You have to think about how you're going to deal damage. You have to kill the villain in some way, so you need to include cards that'll still be able to deal damage. It happens like this for every aspect when you're playing true solo. Gamora is able to fill some of those gaps like no other hero can, because you can specifically target those 6 cards that you can add in from other aspects and have them be what fills in those gaps. You can play an aggression hero and add in 6 justice cards that you think will really help balance out your deck. You can do the same thing if you play justice or protection. Like, there are so many different options that just normally aren't present to make her, you know, fix the weaknesses that other heroes would normally have playing true solo. So I do play a lot of true solo, and that's something that I've really enjoyed with Gamora so far, is just being able to say, I'm gonna protect myself and protect the gaps in my deck by modifying it in such a way that I won't even have to worry about the fact that I don't have some teammates to back me up, or that I'm gonna be taking damage and I might not have someone to help me block or heal because I'm gonna build in some protection cards. There's that option. It's a lot of fun to try to figure all that out and test it out as well. And the last pro that we're going to talk about is basically that Gamora is an overall general strong hero that is going to do a lot on each of her turns. You're going to feel like you're doing a lot, and I put that in the pro because that's something that made Quicksilver so great. Is sometimes you were doing so much on your turn and it just felt so good. You felt like you got so much out of your turn. So even if it wasn't the most powerful turn, it just felt very productive. Gamora functions a lot in that same way. So she has a lot of cards, for instance, like Acrobatic Move, that are 0 cost. And the reason that they're in the deck is they, 0 cost, deal 2 damage. It's not phenomenal, but it's in there to facilitate other cards that want you to play attack or thwart events first before you play them. And every single one of these attack and thwart events you play, at least the first one each phase, is going to trigger her hero abilities, which would do remove a threat or deal a damage as well every time you play an attack or thwart event. So every turn you're going to be playing a lot of cards. At least the most of my turns, I was playing a lot of cards, and it felt really good because of that. I was doing a lot. There's a bit of a puzzle too. You're having to say, okay, what order do I play my cards in to get the most out of Gamora? So there's a lot of decision making, but you feel rewarded by it, and you feel like you've done a lot every single turn you've played Gamora, and she's strong too. So it doesn't feel like you did a lot but didn't accomplish much. She's capable in her own right. She has a lot of powerful cards and a lot of good attack cards that, I can't. What is happening with this thing? I'm not even gonna cut this out of the video because I want you guys to see that I can't seem to get this up. So she's just an overall strong hero. There's, it's a reliable pack to pick up if you just want something that you're gonna get a lot out of, and that you're gonna be able to perform very well with, especially if you're taking on Galaxy's Most Wanted and some of the harder scenarios in the game. Gamora's gonna be a great one to take in there. It's even a great introductory hero in that regard. Maybe not from a deck building perspective because you wanna learn the regular deck building rules first, but in terms of her performance, I would say that it's one of the most reliable ones I've played in the last recent packs that have come out. So that is all the pros for Gamora. Let's move into the cons. The first con, and this isn't a major one, is just that she's not nearly as unique as Star-Lord. And in fact, I would say outside of the deck building, take the deck building out of the play for a second, just the way she feels when you play her, she's pretty normal. Like there's not gonna be a lot of surprises here besides the fact that playing attack and thwart events, facilitate using her hero ability as well as the ordering of them. There are some unique aspects in that regard, but otherwise, a lot of what she does in terms of dealing damage and all that kind of stuff, removing threat, it feels very status quo. There's not going to be a whole ton of surprises like you felt with, Scarlet Witch, or even with Quicksilver and some of the things that he did, and Star-Lord especially. If you're wanting a new way of playing Marvel Champions and you're wanting a new play style and things to feel a little fresh and different, Star-Lord's the better hero to go with rather than Gamora. This is going to feel a little bit more like the classic Marvel Champions feel, again, outside the deck building, which is going to feel fresh and new. The other con is that outside of Miss Marvel specifically, I don't know how many of the cards that come in her pack I would say are essential player cards that you're going to want to use in other decks. There are some, for instance, Angela is one that, if you're playing a lot of Thor and Rocket specifically, that's an ally that you're definitely going to want, and you're going to probably slot into those decks every time you play an aggression version of them. But outside of that, there's Plan of Attack that, even that is probably more so still for Miss Marvel out of anyone. And then Godslayer is a card that I could see ended up in a bunch of different decks that has some potential. But other than that, I wouldn't say there's a whole ton that I noticed in the first few plays that I've had of them that I'm thinking, oh, like if I didn't have this card, I would be really upset. I think you can get by without most of them. So from if Gamora's not a hero that excites you, but you're wondering, should I pick it up for the player cards? I would say you can probably get by without picking this up if you're just looking at it as from a, additional deck building perspective for your other heroes. You can probably wait a little bit on this one, depending on, again, if you're playing Thor or Rocket specifically in aggression a lot, or there's any specific cards you single out as something that you could use in a deck, but there's not a lot of essentials that I'm seeing right on first glance that make this a must-own aside from playing as Gamora perspective. So that would be the other con. Again, not a huge deal, but just something to keep in mind. Okay, so those are all the pros and cons, and I'm just gonna quickly run down for each of them. you should buy Star-Lord if, and you should buy Gamora if, and I'll list off some options quickly just to give you some insight into, if you should pick up Star-Lord, if you should pick up Gamora, which one might interest you a little bit more than the other. So first off, you should pick up Star-Lord if you want to play a hero that feels new and exciting. So, and specifically if you liked Scarlet Witch. If that playstyle speaks to you, if you want something that feels different, if you want something that feels risk-takey and isn't the classic Marvel Champions feel, you want to shake up the formula, Star-Lord by far is the one to pick up over Gamora in that case. Star-Lord also, if you like a challenge, especially at true solo level, Star-Lord is the one you're going to want to go with. I would say he's a more challenging true solo hero, but he's also going to pull off some really powerful turns as long as you're ready to deal with the encounter cards that are going to be coming your way in addition to that. So you should choose Star-Lord if you really enjoy playing leadership. If leadership is an aspect you play a lot of and you're, especially maybe even a little bit tired of the Avenger side of things and you want to try the Guardians, it's a no-brainer. If that's the way you enjoy to play, if that's the aspect you play the most, pick up Star-Lord. There's a bunch of Guardian facilitating leadership cards in here that allow you to play leadership in a different way. There's 3 new leadership allies. There's some other leadership cards in there. This is the leadership one to pick up. So if that is what you're basing it off of, if that's something that you really enjoy, don't even think twice. Pick up Star-Lord and you will have a great time with all the new cards in there. And finally, you should choose Star-Lord if you really want aerial options. If you're someone who has been waiting for aerial to have more of a function in the game, especially with some heroes like Wasp who had a way to gain aerial but didn't really do anything with it. This is the pack to pick up because you're going to get a bunch of new cards across all the aspects that are specifically tied to aerial. You're going to be able to go back to old heroes, build decks that add in different aerial options and see if it's worth it or not. I don't know yet if it is. I haven't done a whole lot of sleuthing in that regard, but the options are there and it should be pretty exciting to test them all out. Okay, so moving on to Gamora, you should choose Gamora if you love deck building. If you're a deck builder, if that's one of the things you love the most in Marvel Champions is crafting your deck, taking it through a scenario and then thinking about, okay, I could make tweaks this way, I could add this, take this out. That's something you really, really love. Gamora might be the one to pick up because she is going to give you way more options that you've never even had to consider in terms of how you build your deck. She's going to build decks in a completely different way. She's going to allow you to do things you normally couldn't do, except maybe with Spider-Woman. Tons of options here. That is the one to pick up if you're the deck builder. You should pick up Gamora if you really like true solo. If you play a lot of true solo and you're looking for one of these to pick up, Gamora is the one to pick up in my opinion because she performs better at true solo. She feels better at true solo, and it feels like she was almost built a little bit for that mode. Even though often a lot of heroes feel like they're better supported at the multiplayer level, she's still great there, but she's going to perform really well as a true solo hero. And finally, you should pick up Gamora if you're struggling with Galaxy's Most Wanted. Out of the two, she might be the best one, especially if you're approaching it from a solo perspective, to finally be able to take down some of those villains a little bit easier. She offers a ton of options, flexibility with adding in some cards you normally wouldn't be able to add into some aspect decks you're building. I think Gamora will perform a little bit better in Galaxy's Most Wanted. Maybe when we get to multiplayer, Star-Lord might actually tip the scales a little bit, but I would say that this is one that you definitely want to pick up if you're struggling with Galaxy's Most Wanted and want to try to turn the tide a little bit. All right, guys, that is it. That is Star-Lord versus Gamora. Again, me personally, if you're curious which one I prefer, my playstyle and the aspects I enjoy, I don't enjoy leadership as much as some of the other aspects, even though I know the leadership is one of the most powerful aspects. Arguably, I mean, it's hard to say, but just in terms of the, how powerful allies are in this game, obviously that's a lot of what leadership is about. So me personally, just based on the playstyle and the fact that I absolutely love deck building, Gamora is the one. If I had only been able to pick up one, I probably would have picked up Gamora first and then looked at Star-Lord after. But that being said, when it comes down to gameplay, I would arguably say I have more fun playing Star-Lord just because their games are more frantic, they're more exciting, there's more happening, there's more to consider. You're having to, it doesn't make me mad that there's this luck aspect, it just makes it more exciting and fun. So it's really just gonna come down to what you enjoy. If you can get them both, I think there's tons of value in getting them both, and I'm not just trying to sell you on this, I don't work for Fantasy Flight, but it's just, they're both great in their own respect, so it's definitely worth getting both. But that being said, if you can only get one, think about it from the perspective of Star-Lord has more options. If you were going to be playing a lot of leadership, all those cards that come in there, you're going to use across multiple other heroes as long as you're playing with the Guardian aspect. Gamora If you don't play Thor and Rocket specifically, there might be less options for the player cards you're getting there, but you're getting a hero that is very reliable and is going to do really well from a solo perspective. So I hope this video helped you out. I hope this might help your decision a little bit, make it a little bit easier. If you liked it, if you want me to do more of these in the future when we get multiple releases, you know, either on the same day or even close together, or heroes that are very similar potentially, and you want to see them compared, let me know. I'm always looking for more ideas of Marvel Champions content we can tackle. Otherwise, this has been another May release, another big release of Marvel Champions. I think our next one we're getting is probably in June. We might have some more Marvel Champions videos in between there to fill the gap, but otherwise we will definitely see you in June for the next one, which I believe is Drax, which should be pretty exciting. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.